The contract that experience, power, and money in the culture has made with innocence and beauty, particularly with older men and young women, throughout history has often been something along these lines. The experience, the awareness of how things usually work out between older men and younger women says something like this: I will feel refreshed, I will feel revived, I will feel joyful and revitalized by the innocence of this young woman, or this young man in the case of gay men. And we all know that this is not terribly important. This is simple, this is naive, this is not valuable. But because I'm a kind man, because I'm worldly, because I have a soft heart, I will give her some money. I will give her some career help. I will teach her. And it's a fair trade. Boils down to young body for money. And the project plays itself out. Maybe the man offers some things, gives some gifts, experiences the new energy that is always available with innocence, and is always available with new, and is always available with young. And then that plays itself out. The man grows tired, the man grows guilty, the man has the new energy wear off, and he expects, without ever communicating this directly and verbally, he expects the young woman to understand, to be mature enough to know this couldn't last, I'm married, blah, 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 blah. Expects the innocence, which was the reason she was attractive to begin with, to know the things that, had she known them, would make her cynical, closed off, not interested in him at all. And maybe she has a fit, and he gives her some money, some gifts, and complains to his buddies, these young women, who do they think they are, blah, blah, blah. He goes away and maybe repeats the pattern. Or maybe he's touched something that's much more valuable than money or experience, etc., in the sincerity and the beauty of that young person. And we've got hotel power washing just starting up, but I will complete the thought. Most of my life, I have dated women over 50 years old. A little bit of a bid for the opposite. I find that American women who are over 50 years old know themselves, accept themselves, and are more sensitive as a statistic, while simultaneously being more comfortable being themselves, being more open to intelligence, and often more maternal, which in the case of early childhood neglect is particularly soothing, to have the nurturing aspect, that part of every woman that is the mother. And while this is present in any lover relationship, the nurturer and the challenger and the various roles, it's more, a woman that's over 50 is more comfortable with all of who she is, including the mother, which a young woman in a culture that denigrates mothers, that denigrates vulnerability and need, that shames it, that shames the need and shames those meeting the need, is less tolerable in the socio-political structure of being cool. A woman over 50 is more interested in solid, healthy relating than being cool. It's just a statistical reality. And so most of my life, starting at age 22, but my first serious relationship at age 26, have been with women over 50 years old. And a definite preference for internal qualities over external physical traits and attributes. Though it should be said also that a woman that accepts herself and her presence and knows who she is significantly more capable of a dimensionality of sexuality than a young person who doesn't know who they are and is therefore not able to bring that to the table in all relating communication expression. That being said, I am in a relationship with a young woman for one of the first times in my life. And the most serious relationship with a woman younger than me, which is also very new. She's 24, I'm 42. And the same, well, it's an interesting story how I entered this relationship. However, I find myself in this dynamic where I cannot have a conversation like this with her on a political level. One of her greatest strengths is kindness, presence, sensitivity, empathy, understanding, and innocence. And these are amazing qualities that I'm experiencing at very high levels that are very rare. I don't know anywhere in the world. I don't know a woman anywhere in the world who brings these at these levels into relationship. And on an external level, I am a mentor and teacher and protector. I've helped her start a business that she's fully funding, but I provide guarantees. And there is this tendency for many of the parts in me that are no longer innocent, that are no longer kind, that are interested in the variety of stimulation, interested in the drugs of power, in the addiction of distraction, silent presence and innocence is not an answer to that level of addiction. And so I find myself on a mental, detached, and somewhat sociopathic level curious about other sexual experiences, pretending that I couldn't possibly be in relationship for a long time with such a young woman. And thinking along these traditional lines of as long as her physical safety is up, as long as her health is up, as long as her mental knowledge is up, as long as her business and finances is up, and that I've played a supportive role in each of these areas from the point of meeting her, that it's, more than generous, and that's kind of the it of my responsibility for being an ethical partner as an older, more experienced man with a younger woman in a power differential where she has less money and less worldly confidence. And while I think those are good ethical guidelines for someone with more power, I think the most important one is to ensure that that power is transferring, meaning that by requesting and mentoring her in the starting of a suitable business, and requesting that she work every day to self-sustain through that business, and requesting that she read the books and practice the skills that make her less and less dependent on me. I do think that's an important principle in a power differential relationship, that every day the need is less and the power differential is less and the independence is greater, as opposed to becoming addictive, where one increases dependency, floods the other person with stimulation and resources and stuff that they can only get through you, and they don't learn how to get it for themselves. And then when the relationship ends, there's this huge withdrawal symptom of social status, money, power, pleasure, quality of life, and there was no sense of how to create that as an equal. Because, in this case, the man enjoyed the power more than being of service, and actually gets off on the idea of someone's life falling apart because, this, that, and the other. That this is what makes a power differential relationship abusive. And I also see that I'm in Thailand. My girlfriend is Filipina. I'm in Thailand, though, and I've taken the time to talk to a variety of women and understand the nuances of their prior relationships, many of them with both Thai and Western men, many of them abusive, many of them sustaining the power differential. And what I want to suggest and what I'm experiencing is that this hypothesis is fundamentally wrong and chauvinistic in that it misses the most sacred element, the most magical element in any human relationships, which is the innocence. which is the innocence and the beauty of innocence as a dimension of wonder, a dimension of trust, a dimension of belief, a dimension of spontaneity, a dimension of authenticity, a dimension of joy that someone like myself, with chronic fatigue, with trauma, with past trauma, with irritation, with terror, with bitterness, with cynicism, with rage, has a small window into, meaning the disappointments and the betrayals and the materialism that is demanded for safety. It's this constant competitive slog in the United States to get ahead, to stay safe in a cult that will throw you out if you don't win, in a cult that will throw you out if you don't have money, in a cult that will disrespect you and dishonor you as a human being if you don't have money, and is, in effect, a state of profound prostitution. The prostitution to be inauthentic and do all these weird and crazy things to get money, to be considered a human being. And my partner has experienced a large amount of that as well, which is why it's so remarkable, and I think partly attributable to age, that so much innocence remains. But partly because I'm fed up with the level of prostitution, the level of chauvinism, the level of abuse and materialism, and partly because I find it incredibly healing. I have taken that stand that, as a sensitive, I'm going to support her in an art business that she will sustain by creating the art and maintaining a ratio of expenses and stuff, but that I will back. I do it by buying all of her art for about a third of its value as she makes it, and then holding that indefinitely, and as clients come in, getting reimbursed, and then giving her an allowance as well that affects, gives her expenses that relate to our relationship. And doing this in such a way that, should the relationship end at any point, that she could make more money but with less security by selling art directly and teaching her how, because it takes about a year to learn how to sell effectively, to learn how to be, a prostitute in business. And but that sensitivity supports who she is, to be able to do art rather than work in a factory, which is, really barbaric that we put sensitives in factories, because we don't create other roles for them, and we don't teach business in school. So these are some of my steps: making books available, challenging, teaching, showing when I do business, and look at what I did here, look at what I did here, look at what I did here. Now do it yourself, see how you're doing, look at the results. And of course she's doing wonderfully. But what I'm finding, we have monogamous agreements that are for her, meaning that they are important for her feeling emotionally open and contained. But I'm finding they're actually for me, And I'm finding that the pleasure and the beauty of being with innocence in joy is more satisfying than sexuality. It's more satisfying than many of the pain-numbing coping mechanisms that I've developed to manage the soul-wrenching pain of American culture. And I realize I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to be the most loving person I could be to her that is also, honest, meaning, I'm not going to pretend that I'm feeling or doing something that I'm not. But I just had one of a number of conversations with her, talking about the sexuality that I would like to express with another woman that's much rougher, that processes some of the hurt, some of the humiliation, some of the rage that I feel with so many of the women in my past, but that I don't want to process with my partner because I don't have those feelings with her. I have an innocence and a sweetness and a care that I want to protect. And so, as these different frictions come up, and I notice my erection with the idea of, in Thailand, they have very, very healing, therapeutic Thai massage. But the women, to make more money and send it back to their family, also offer, quote, a special massage, for a generous tip. And this is sanctioned within the culture and understood. And thankfully, these women are not shamed in their cult for this. They're considered honorable that they take care of their family, often single families where their partners have abandoned them with children, and who are also responsible for the parents in a cult that has no retirement protection, etc. It's the young children take care of the parents. It's part of the social contract. And these are very nice, nurturing women, not at all like the, quote, prostitutes I might meet in the United States. And so it's actually a very healing experience. And yet it excludes the innocent and young parts of my partner. And I've chosen not to participate in that, mostly because I see the confusion in the very young parts that are the most innocent. I don't know if you've noticed this, but the most magical and beautiful parts in a partner are the little girl and the little boy, their joy and their enthusiasm, their beauty. And it's such an honor to have every part of my reality be witnessed by them, as opposed to partitioning it off. You would not understand this, and creating barriers. And I've chosen not to do that. And this is a new kind of relationship for me. There are no roadmaps that have been given to me. It's her first relationship, other than being lied to and used a few times briefly by both Filipino and American men. And yet, I keep coming back to the innocence and feeling the gold there, feeling as if that's the most precious part of my life. It's the most precious part of her life. It is sacred in its magic, in its nuance. And while I have established somewhat addictive personas, that whether through pornography or fantasy or the power dynamic of being able to be the rich person courted for sexual massage or whatever, that all of this is medicinal to the powerlessness, to the loneliness, to the sense of inadequacy, to the sense of not being fully honored or wanted that I experience as an American male in my country. I can live in my country for a year and not have a single woman approach me and say, wow, I've read your books or this, that, and the other, and I'd really, really like to spend time with you. I can spend a year without that going on, or maybe it goes on twice for an afternoon. And that separation and dissociation. And I can also invite 100 women to connect deeply in America and have 3 respond with a yes that is so boring, it's hardly worth the effort of asking 100 women for 3 people to say, sure, why not? Let's meet for coffee. Well, that's a boring date. Where? Well, I don't know, call me in 2 weeks. It's boring. It's just not interesting. And with so much to share and contribute in all levels, sexually, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, in life changes, in travel, in business, in art, to have all of that just missed as a, well, whatever, in a couple of weeks is just not that, it's just disheartening. So that's medicinal to have people courting you and flirting and laughing and all of that, with a fair amount of sincerity, because the Thai masseuse, they have complete discretion and they don't escalate a relationship that they don't personally enjoy and feel safe with. And I know faces and body language enough to get a sense of when a woman is really enjoying my company versus just trying to make a few extra dollars. So there's a much more fluid relationship. I've even had sexual masseuses in Thailand say, no, I'm not going to charge you anything, I like you, and take their day off and want to spend it with me. And so it's a much more fluid, heartfelt, gradient. And yet this excludes the kind of inner 6-year-old and the inner delight of my partner. And so we navigate that. But the bottom line is, I guess what I want to communicate is there is a supposition that it's a fair exchange to break someone's heart and destroy their innocence in exchange for money, power, status, and world experience. And I disagree. I think that the innocence that we each have, to whatever degree we have it, is the most precious dimension of our existence. That the most exquisite moments of our life will come from honoring that innocence, and that the greatest joys and healing will come from honoring it in another. And that sensory pleasure and addiction doesn't cut it in the long run with the emptiness that comes from the vacated terrain of innocence. Because when we abuse another person's innocence, we abuse our own. When we abuse our own, we abuse another's innocence. And I think that the men, and in many cases the women too these days, are selling themselves and their partners short by choosing variety, addiction, stimulation, and power play over innocence when there is a tension between the two. I think everyone's losing. That the depression increases over time, the cynicism increases over time, the sense of self-hatred increases over time. But most importantly of all, that most exquisite of elixirs, the boundarylessness that comes from innocence completely trusting and loving innocence, and innocence completely trusting and loving innocence. When two people put that first, it is so beautiful. And because of our cult in the United States, it is a cult of betraying that. And it is one of the most painful, heartbreaking, heart and soul-wrenching experiences of a lifetime to give that innocence to another and have it betrayed, masked, lied to, avoided, run away from as if it's a bad smell. As if the most precious elixir in the universe is a nuisance to the sophisticated asshole persona that's so enamored with looking cool and so terrified of being worthless that it would betray everything that is most valuable to sustain that image, that addiction. And this, I feel like I'm a winner in a way that I've never been before as I honor this terrain. The innocence in me starts to regrow, and I get a sense of who I was before I was a prostitute to money, before I was a prostitute to cult norms, before I was a prostitute to being cool, before I was a prostitute to the addiction of power. That there was something there that was exterminated at a young age systematically by the sociopathic environment, by parents that dumped their shame and abuse on their children, by adults around that sanctioned and protected the abuse and lied about it and made talking about it taboo, by the government that doesn't care about anything as long as they get their tax revenue and stay in control, by clients who by and large don't care about your feelings, just care about getting their products at a good price. And it's a complete sociopathic ecology in which those that feel the most are the most upset with the fact that no one else is paying attention to their or their own feelings. And so it rewards caring less and less, which leads to more sociopathic behavior, which leads to more sociopathic behavior. It's a virus. So I'm excited about flipping this on its head and making innocence, naivete, creativity, joy, and the magical child the figurehead, and seeing the beautiful places that takes me and us and her, seeing the accelerated growth and learning that takes place, the greater influx of energy one of the few things that can combat the chronic fatigue and the depression of living a life very successfully that is so disconnected from who I am as a human being. That, it's an act of numbing to participate in it every day. And yet parts of me come awake and awaken when I honor something precious that is inside each one of us, but that this young woman has the courage and the vulnerability to present, to be honored. And that as I do, I awaken. I start honoring myself. My life starts growing. So I really think that it is the older person, the cynic, who loses the most when they patronize innocence in those powerful enough to still hold that resonance in their body, in their eyes, in their words, in their truthfulness. And I feel deeply honored to diverge from the cult, to put my own innocence and my partner's first, and to let things ripple out and reshape from that magic. I can't think of anything, and I don't know another arena. There's nothing I can buy. There's no place that I can go on the planet that does more for that sense of awakening, sense of life, sense of hope and beauty, than to pray, than to worship. That which is more beautiful than who I have become in myself and in my partner.